I wanted to thank Stuart for inviting me here to talk to everybody today about this really timely topic. It's one that I feel really strongly and passionately about. And I'm really honored to share the stage, so to speak, with Mayor Wilson and with Scudder. So before I get into talking about bus network redesigns, I just did want to quickly introduce my company and myself. And my company first, because my involvement in bus network redesigns is largely due to the amazing work of our entire team. I'm just here representing. So Foursquare ITP is a multimodal transportation planning firm. We focus on solutions that are practical and implementable, and we rely heavily on the latest data processing and tools, as well as extensive collaboration to develop solutions to transportation's biggest challenges. And regional transportation planning and bus service and operations planning are at the very core of what we do as a company. And personally, I've been very involved in several of the bus network redesigns that we've done, including Baltimore Link, Hampton Roads, Jacksonville Transit. And I was also the principal investigator on two recent TCRP reports, the TCRP Synthesis 140, which is about comprehensive bus network redesigns, and also TCRP Report 221 on redesigning transit networks for the new mobility future. And finally, I'm a transit rider. While I currently do have a car and I'm a multimodal traveler, I spent 10 years living car-free back in the day when we didn't have a transit app and we just had to carry a big pack of schedules in our bags. So bring that empathy to the folks that we're working with every day. So with that, let me talk about what a bus network redesign is. It's more than just redrawing bus routes. Certainly simplifying the bus system to make it easier to understand, more reliable, and have higher frequency are all important. And in fact, this particular bus network redesign in Muskegon, Michigan, that we planned, which was just implemented during the pandemic, ridership's been improving and it's been receiving great reviews, but it's more than just the bus routes. A bus network redesign really needs to focus on designing service and improvements based on the goals set forward at the outset of the project. So it's really critical that these goals are collaboratively developed and socialized, which helps set the stage for better support of the recommendations later on. So for example, the goals could be access to more jobs and destinations in a certain amount of time that this video was showing, or a goal could be that resources should be distributed equitably across the region, potentially emphasizing services that both serve a lot of ridership, but also serve riders with a high equity need. Regardless of what the goals are, the plan really should be geared towards meeting them, whether it's access to jobs, equitable distribution of service, reduction in travel time, increase in ridership. And then of course the goals might be in direct conflict with each other, which is why as part of a redesign, it's really important to evaluate trade-offs. It's critical that everyone understand that trade-offs will need to be made in order to best meet the goals while staying within close to or about the budget that is out there today for operating transit and also on the capital side investments there. I've just listed a few of the trade-offs here, but there's lots to consider and they're often in direct conflict with each other. So it's important to have those conversations throughout the process. Bus network redesign is also about communicating the very real impacts that it will have and making sure people see how it will impact them. So the messaging has to resonate with both stakeholders, but also with the riding public. Stakeholders and elected officials will want to weigh the anticipated impacts at the network level. So overall increase in ridership or increase in access to jobs. But the riding public will want to see how the changes impact them at the route level. Because as hard as we might try, you cannot educate riders to be empathetic to what's best for the system. They will naturally and reasonably want to know how the changes will impact them. Again, it's not just about the bus routes and the schedules. Planners need to account for capital improvements, such as bus priority to make the routes go faster, passenger amenities, and capital projects related to operations like transfer facilities and operating divisions. Bus network redesign is also about dialogue, giving people ownership in the process, whether it's talking with people at a bus stop, talking with operators in their break room, regional leaders at a stakeholder workshop, or residents at a pop-up event, or even online through information sharing, office hours, and surveys. Dialogue is so important. Redesigns really require many touch points with all of these groups. In terms of getting them to understand the importance of bus, what it means for the region in terms of access to opportunity, economic sustainability, and equity. And of course, what it means for them personally, whether as a rider, potential rider, or as a bus operator. It's really important through this dialogue that we give the riders agency over the changes, make them feel empowered through the process to play a key role in the decisions that must be made. There's different ways to do that. For example, relying on community-based organizations to reach out to people, as well as local ambassadors to help get the message out to their communities. I also did want to take a moment to talk about one of the most often forgotten groups of stakeholders, and that's the bus drivers. It's really important to establish trust with them and maintain an open and ongoing dialogue. It's always been a critical part of redesigns, in part because the drivers can provide great information and insight as we're developing recommendations for route changes. Also because they're going to be the front line when the network redesign is implemented. They're going to be the first people that riders go to with questions. And also, more importantly, now with the bus operator shortages everywhere, it's so important that the drivers feel ownership and agency in the plan to make them feel like they're a part of it. Most importantly, bus network redesigns are about flexibility and adaptability. Just like any other thoughtful planning process, they're not formulaic. The approach to a bus network redesign in Brooklyn and Boise cannot and should not be the same. They'll have different goals, different populations, demographics, and of course, different levels of transit use. And in addition to being flexible, the planners and agencies really need to be adaptable as the planning process progresses. Things are changing. There'll be requests that come in. There'll be pivots to how we approach things, and being adaptable has to be at the forefront. So now I'll just take a couple minutes to talk about some of the benefits of bus network redesigns, as well as some of the challenges that we'll face in this region doing a bus network redesign. First, as Stuart mentioned, we did plan the Baltimore Link bus network redesign. And so some examples of benefits can be measured just in terms of access to service, either service in general or high frequency service by certain populations, such as low income or single vehicle households, or access to jobs. So for example, the Baltimore Link network that was implemented increased access to transit by vulnerable populations, whether they're low income or seniors, by about 30% each, and also provided access to 15% more jobs, which was one of the key goals of the plan. And there are also ridership benefits. Ridership benefits of redesigns right now are a little hard to measure if they were implemented before COVID due to the last 2 years. But for example, in Baltimore, when this was implemented in June of 2017, ridership had been trending downward consistently since 2015. Once it was implemented and prior to the pandemic, weekday ridership had stabilized, and weekend ridership was up, including 13% on Sundays. And more locally in Fairfax County, the county chose to replan their system in 5 groupings, and we've been working with them on all of those. So the benefits analysis here is just shown for the area around this new Silver Line, that this system will be implemented in concert with that whenever that does happen. But the benefits of the plan show a decrease in travel time between key origins and destinations, such as dense residential areas with job centers and healthcare facilities, as well as an increase in the population, specifically minority and low-income populations that'll have access to service, as well as an increase in access to the higher frequency service. And also the plan in Fairfax County will increase the distance to which riders can get to within a given amount of time by transit. So now that we've talked about some of the benefits, I wanted to hit on some of the biggest challenges. So I think it goes without saying that in this region, we have a lot of bus operators. There are 8 local bus operators, and this is not to mention all the roadway owners and jurisdictions that control the roadways for bus priority, that control the sidewalks for passenger amenities and bus stops and so forth. But this isn't the first bus network redesign that involves multiple providers. A great example is Los Angeles. And it can be done. It just requires more coordination and another layer to the planning. Another key challenge in this region and any region that's embarking on a bus network redesign now is COVID. Let's not forget that typically bus network redesigns rely on data and travel trends from recent months and recent years. And of course, the last 2 years have not been typical. So determining how to blend today's information with what could be the travel needs of the future will require some creativity and finessing on the planning process. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, and this is not unique to this region, but it's important to remember that while we're planning a really shiny new system, which is really exciting, that we have to remember the people that this will impact the most are the everyday riders. So sometimes when doing a bus network redesign, planners can forget that what might be good from a system perspective, like better average route productivity, faster speeds by staying out of neighborhoods, may not be good from a rider perspective. The people that rely on the bus every day, as we all know, are relying on it to get them to usually multiple jobs, childcare, healthcare, shopping, educational opportunities, basically anywhere they need to go. And what we as planners sometimes see as good from a performance perspective will often be viewed as just another element of chaos in their already difficult lives. So while in the end, this redesign will actually be a benefit to the individual riders, so we don't necessarily want to just not implement the changes. It's important that we really consider the everyday rider and keep empathy as a core value in our approach to the planning. So now that I've talked a little bit about what a bus network redesign is and benefits and challenges, I just want to quickly go through the process for a bus network redesign. Obviously, it's a flexible process, but this is just at a high level in general. We look at three key elements when we're planning the new service and the associated capital improvements for a bus network redesign. First, we look at what the market says. So what are the travel needs throughout the region in terms of overall demand for travel, but also specifically for transit. Then we look at the current service, looking at both the traditional performance metrics of routes, across various time periods due to the impacts of COVID, but also digging into some of the details that's causing current delay in buses so that solutions can focus on addressing that. And last, but most importantly, we take into account what people have to say through extensive intentional engagement at key points in the process with all of those stakeholders that we mentioned earlier. And when all of this information is considered together, you come up with a balanced and holistic approach to developing the plans for the bus network redesign. Another key element to developing a balanced plan that focuses on the region's goals, once we have the information described in the last slide, is to focus on design principles and follow principles for how to design service in different ways that'll meet different needs. And we also develop and follow service standards for consistency, whether it's standards and goals related to the route length, the route directness, how frequent the routes should be at different times of day in different parts of the region, and stop and route spacing along those routes. And in the process of replanning the system, we also need to be open to the right solution for each situation, identifying where in the region different service types might work better than others. So not just looking at where will transit work, but what type of transit will work where, whether it's local fixed route service, express style commuter service, bus rapid transit or priority bus, or even on-demand and microtransit. Another key part of the process is using online interactive tools that allow planners, operators, stakeholders, and the public to be on the same page and be engaged and understand the needs and the impacts of the choices and trade-offs, giving people that opportunity to engage in a way that they can understand what's happening. And now, if you'll indulge me for less than 2 minutes, I want to share this video that shows another example of how interaction between planners and stakeholders and the public can be used to collaboratively interact and make decisions. So I'm going to play this. I hope the sound will work. And this is just a brief snippet from a bus network redesign that we're currently conducting in suburban Minneapolis. And with that, let me click and I will hope it plays.
MBTA and Southwest Transit are completing a system-wide study to plan transit service over the next 5 years. We created different scenarios for the future of transit in the region and then solicited your feedback on those scenarios. Now we have a draft final network of proposed changes to share with you. Some of the improvements to bus service include changes to frequency, or how often a bus arrives at any given stop, hours of service, the hours during the day that a bus route provides service, and route realignments, or changes to where a bus route goes, such as the overall length of the route and which bus stops it serves.
In this video, we'll present 2 theoretical bus riders and how their trips will be made easier and quicker based on the proposed changes.
At the end of the video, we'll explain the ways that you can share your feedback to make sure your voice is heard about the proposed changes. Now, it's time to explore your trip. Our project website has a lot of tools to explore these proposed changes more, including a trip comparison tool. You can enter a location, and the tool shows what your trip looks like today and what it would look like under the proposed changes. It also has information like bus routes, transfers, and travel time. MBTA Connect and Southwest Prime are options now and in the future too. You can see these in the trip comparison tool as well. We want to know what you think about these proposed changes. Visit the
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to move on to the next slide. I just wanted to show another way that folks can be collaborated with across many platforms.
Laura, we'll need you to wrap up within a minute here.
MBTA.
Yep. Oh, sorry. Yep, I'll be wrapped up. And besides working with stakeholders, I did just want to touch on the importance of regular ongoing collaboration with all parts of all agencies. So everyone from planning and scheduling to capital projects to finance and civil rights across the agencies, and of course in this region across many agencies, because ongoing conversations are really key. And of course, we need to keep our eye on the prize, which is actually putting the great plan onto the street. So making sure that agencies are checking early in the process on the impacts of the changes on capital improvements, whether new transfer facilities might be needed, or whether additional bus bays might be needed, and certainly conducting equity analysis all along the way to avoid surprises at the end. The last part of pre-implementation is extensive communication in all forms, making sure that we get to as many people as possible so it's not a surprise. And finally, just when you think the process is done, you shouldn't just drop it and leave. Agencies need to continue to modify and revisit through service and ridership monitoring. And that's the beauty of buses, right? Like with the right amount of investment in bus priority, passenger amenities, and agency support facilities, buses can provide really high quality transportation, but they're also flexible enough to allow the agency to commit to future changes if needed. And that's all I have. Thank you so much.